What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Attachment Confessions. My name is Chelsea, and I am super excited that you're here for episode 10. We are officially in double digits, baby. For those of you that are brand new to the Attachment Confessions, welcome to the Confessions fam. I am really grateful that you're here today. From the moment I discovered attachment science, literally everything about every relationship I had ever been in finally made sense. And now I'm figuring out what it takes to earn my attachment security and have the best possible relationships moving forward. Here on the Attachment Confessions, we'll be diving into all things attachment science while you guys tag along on my attachment healing adventure. My hope is that by bringing attachment science to those of you who have never heard of it before, and by sharing my own story, you'll also be inspired to set out on your own attachment healing journey. Like the tagline says, attachment science changed my life, for real. So I feel like it's kind of my duty to share this with the world. Speaking of, if you could pretty please take a quick minute to do this podcast a huge solid and follow or subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It seriously does wonders for helping get the Attachment Confessions in front of more eyeballs when people search for certain topics like attachment or relationships or mental health. I would be so appreciative. All right, on last week's episode, we did a deep dive into a topic that a number of you have asked me about since starting this pod: narcissists. Particularly, where does narcissism fall on the attachment spectrum? Well, luckily for us insecurely attached peeps, narcissism is a totally separate psychological construct of its own. Now, there is a base attachment that most narcissists seem to have in common, because we all have a formed attachment style. That base attachment is most often fearful avoidant. Now, listen, guys, as a healing fearful avoidant myself, I don't love breaking that news. However, it's imperative to point out that while a narcissist can be a fearful avoidant, not all fearful avoidants are narcissists. It's like saying all tigers are cats, but not all cats are tigers. Got it? There can be some overlap in behaviors when an FA's attachment wounds are triggered. However, that's an in the heat of the moment behavior. With narcissists, the characteristics we often think of, like grandiosity, entitlement, lack of empathy and compassion, manipulation and control, the need for admiration and praise, those are ingrained into their personality. So they carry these characteristics throughout every area and relationship in their life, not just their romantic relationships. Speaking of narcissists and their romantic relationships, that leads us to the topic of today's episode: the narcissist and the codependent toxic relationship dynamic. Guys, narcissists know what they're doing when it comes to selecting potential partners. It's quite disturbing, actually. Narcissists are notorious for seeking out codependent, emotionally vulnerable individuals. If we're thinking about it in terms of attachment, they tend to prey on anxious preoccupieds or fearful avoidants that lean anxious. And guess what? It's those exact insecure attachments that generally gravitate towards, wait for it, narcissists. It's seriously the perfect relationship storm that almost always results in a complete Category 5 toxic relationship saga. I know what you're thinking. Dang, that's wild, Chels. But why do these two seem to find their way to each other when it's nothing but dysfunction and devastation? Well, guys, all we have to do is take a look at the science. Prepare to be amazed yet again at this crazy little theory called attachment. Remember in episode 9 when I shared with you guys about my covert narcissist ex? Well, the toxic narcissist codependent relationship dynamic explains a lot about why in the world I would have stayed in that relationship for as long as I did, which was basically a decade. So many people in my life told me, I don't know how you're with him. And the alarming part about that is they only knew a fraction of what I was actually dealing with. If they really knew how sinister he was toward me, I probably would have been kidnapped for my own good. But unfortunately, I kept like 90% of what was truly going on to myself, which sadly is all too common in these situations. And also, what is sadly all too common is just how many of these relationship dynamics are out there. It's more prevalent than you might expect. And it is so dangerous and destructive because the codependent one is essentially trapped in a cycle of manipulation, control, charm, and confusion, unsure how to escape, which is exactly what I was experiencing in that relationship. Shoot, I'm sure many of you listening have been in this exact type of relationship dynamic yourself, or maybe you're in it as we speak. If that's the case, listen up because it's time to break free. So, what is freaking up with narcissists, right? What's their MO here? Narcissists purposely create codependency in their partners in order to have a sense of control. Anxious preoccupieds and fearful avoidants that lean anxious are the perfect candidates for narcissists because of their deep empathy, compassion, and tendency to self abandon their own wants and needs. It's easy for the narcissist to swoop in with their charm. Then, once AP or FA, leaning anxious, is hooked, it's time for the narcissist to start letting their freak flag fly. They make everything about them and take total advantage of the codependent partner's empathetic nature, commitment, and love for them. The codependent gives endlessly of themselves in their relationships, which is exactly what the narcissist thrives on. As you'll recall from episode 1, anxious preoccupied's main attachment wound is a deep fear of abandonment. All they want is for their partner to love them and never leave them. They are true love addicts due to the intermittent reinforcement they received in childhood from their parents. They are performers for love. As Dr. Sarah Hensley says, they will twist themselves into the perfect pretzel of whatever it is that they believe their partner wants them to be. They literally feel like they will die if their partner leaves them. If they upset their partner, they will fawn, FAWN, as a trauma response in order to make the conflict go away and their partner no longer upset with them. Even if the AP isn't the one in the wrong at all, they will over apologize in order to maintain the connection with their partner. This is why narcissists love targeting APs or FAs that lean anxious. They truly have their codependent partner in the palm of their hand. As you may recall from a previous episode, codependency is basically the idea of I'm not okay if you're not okay. It's an unhealthy reliance on another person, essentially becoming dependent on them to live one's life. As a result, the codependent partner ends up totally sacrificing themselves and abandoning their own needs in order to hold on to the relationship and maintain a sense of peace with their partner. This creates a very toxic and harmful cycle. The good news, it is very possible to break this codependent pattern. Just like anything else in life that needs to be changed, the first step is self awareness and recognizing this pattern within yourself. According to attachment expert Thais Gibson, some of the most common signs of codependency are 1. Constantly seeking approval from others, 2. Basing your self worth on your partner's opinion, 3. Avoiding conflict and taking the blame in order to keep the peace, 4. Obsessing over your partner's actions or moods, 5. Basing your life on your partner's moods or habits, 6. Feeling guilty for prioritizing your own needs, 7. Putting your personal and emotional needs second, 8. Fear of rejection and abandonment, 9. Attracted to people who need fixing, and 10. Believing you're unworthy of self love, self compassion, and self empowerment. Dang, guys, that list is tough to read off. Numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9 hit way too close to home for me, particularly in my previous long term relationship with the covert narcissist. And the crazy thing is, in the handful of times I've actually opened up about to those closest to me what it was really like behind the curtain with that person, nobody can believe that I, of all people, would have put up with that level of insanity. I can't believe it either. It was like a 10-year long out of body experience. Like I've said before, I was quite literally held hostage in my own life by that person, and no one knew or could have ever fathomed the extent of it. No one will ever really understand. That's one of the things about that relationship that is difficult for me to reconcile within my own spirit. I gave up so much of myself, my dreams, my needs, my happiness, my time, my friends, my family, my money, my freedom, my sanity, my own health and well being for someone who gave me virtually nothing. They just took and took and took. Not only did they take, they expected it of me. They demanded it of me. They completely took advantage of my kind, loving nature and they twisted it into what was the expectation they had of me. Yet, I wasn't given the same in return. And for many of you listening, you unfortunately know all too well exactly what I went through because you very likely have gone through something similar too. And I freaking hate that for you. I hate it for me too. That's 10 precious years of my life I'll never get back. But I'm just grateful I finally said no more when I did. Realizing now that I was dealing with a covert narcissist who was preying upon and taking full advantage of the bleeding heart I have for others does make me feel less crazy and less judgmental of myself for staying so long, though. The thing is, though, that he was not like that at the beginning. Were there red flags here and there that, under the spell of butterflies and excitement, I pushed away and made excuses for? Abso-freaking-lutely. But nothing that could have ever given me any indication of what was about to come. Like we talked about in episode 9, the classic narcissist we all imagine when we hear that word is all about themselves in the most performative, obnoxious manner. That would be an overt narcissist. Covert narcissists operate differently, though. Yes, both types are all about themselves. After all, that is their innate personality trait. But in coverts, it's in like a woe is me victim mentality way. That's how my ex operated, but not at first. That's how they get you. You don't realize their narcissism at the beginning. Whether they are overt or covert, they are able to lure you in with charm, confidence, and charisma. However, as the relationship progresses, they use all sorts of manipulation techniques in order to gain control of their partner and of the relationship in general, thus creating the narcissist codependent dynamic. This is 1000% the most painful relationship dynamic that exists. It's so painful because things seem perfect at first. 6 to 8 weeks is typically when romantic attachment forms. Attachment in this sense has nothing to do with the attachment styles we form in childhood. I'm talking about actually becoming attached emotionally to a romantic partner. When it's become clear to the narcissist that their anxious preoccupied or fearful avoidant leaning anxious partner has crossed the threshold of being into them to being attached to them, that's when it's time to start shedding the nice mask and letting the manipulation games begin. This is when the connection begins to spiral into a nightmare cycle of emotional pain. Like I mentioned earlier, the narcissist codependent relationship dynamic is pretty much the perfect storm. This is because each of their vulnerabilities and needs totally reinforce the other's dysfunctional tendencies. So, why is it that codependents are naturally drawn to narcissists? The short answer is something that's been mentioned on this podcast before. We are attracted to our unfinished business. What exactly does that mean for an AP or an FA that leans anxious? First thing it means is familiarity. Those with an anxious attachment style often felt as though they had to perform for love growing up and be a version of themselves they think their parents wanted them to be in order to receive attention and emotional attunement. Because of this, they tend to feel a sense of familiarity or comfort in relationships where they are needed in order to fulfill someone else's needs. Second would be their core need for reassurance. Codependents often seek reassurance and external validation in order to justify their own self worth. Narcissists often breadcrumb validation, like when the codependent is behaving in the way they want them to. Breadcrumbing for an anxious attachment is a form of intermittent reinforcement, creating and reinforcing the addiction to love that they crave. Third would be their savior complex. Hashtag relatable AF. Codependents often have a strong desire to save or fix others that they care about. As we've talked about many times before on the attachment confessions, you cannot fix anybody. However, these rescue fantasies live inside of us because we incorrectly believe that by having the influence to fix or save someone, we will finally be worthy of their love and acceptance. And last, but certainly not least, would be their fear of abandonment. As you will recall, the number one fear of an anxious attachment is the fear of abandonment. Even if the relationship is wildly toxic and unhealthy, the thing that APs desperately try to avoid at all costs is their partner leaving them. Because they have such a deep wound around rejection and being left in the dust, they are highly likely to cling to relationships, despite them being unhealthy and abusive, in the unending hope that they can salvage them. Now, I will say this. In my particular situation with the covert narcissist, really the only one out of those four that resonates with me is the savior complex situation. This is probably because I'm a fearful avoidant, and in that relationship, I leaned avoidant, not anxious. That is because my ex was highly anxious, and remember, FAs lean opposite of their partner. In terms of my codependency, though, I was very much of the mindset that I'm not okay if you're not okay. Most of the manipulation and control tactics that my ex utilized revolved around making his mental health issues the only thing that mattered. And he insisted that our lives be totally centered around his anxiety, depression, OCD, etc. He also refused to get proper help for these life debilitating issues. Yet, I was expected to just let it control every aspect of not only his life, but my life as well. He completely took advantage of my love, care, and commitment in this way because I was terrified that if I didn't comply with everything, something very tragic could happen. This was the type of control that kept me in for so long. I was completely petrified that if anything happened to him, or if he did anything unreversible to himself, it would ultimately be my fault. And I don't know how I would ever be able to live with that level of guilt. All right, that sums up why codependents are naturally drawn to narcissists. Let's chat through the reasons that narcissists seek out codependents. First is their need for attention and admiration. Narcissists thrive on constant reassurance, validation, and admiration. Since anxiously attached peeps need validation and reassurance in order to feel worthy, they naturally give praise and validation to their partners. If you're familiar with the five love languages, words of affirmations is the primary love language for most APs. As far as love languages go, we all tend to show love the way that we prefer to receive it. That's what comes naturally. So, codependents are great at giving narcissists exactly what they are looking for here. Second is the sense of control they have over codependent partners. Those with anxious attachments really struggle with setting healthy boundaries in relationships, making them an easy target for manipulation and control. Narcissists get off to the power they have in their relationships. They have no problem taking advantage of their codependent partner's tendency to stuff their own needs down and prioritize their selfish desires. Third is it reinforces their sense of superiority and entitlement. The codependent's unending devotion and commitment to the narcissist feeds their ego like no other. The idea that no matter what they do, how terrible they can be, won't drive their partner away and actually just perpetuates the codependent to continue sacrificing themselves for the relationship to try and prove that they are worthy, that reinforces to the narcissist just how important and powerful they are. And lastly, narcissists seek out codependence because it allows them to avoid true intimacy. Narcissists may appear to be charming on the outside, but inside, they deeply struggle with opening up emotionally and showing genuine feelings and vulnerability. Because anxiously attached individuals are highly unlikely to assert their own needs and emotions, this allows the narcissist to avoid having true emotional intimacy in the relationship, just the way they like it. Now, I know that that last part sounds very, very much like a dismissive avoidant. And that is, a common trait that a dismissive avoidant would have with a narcissist. But again, the base attachment for most narcissists is fearful avoidant. Guys, this relationship dynamic is brutal. Having a narcissist in your life, whether that be your romantic partner, a family member, someone you work with, a friend, is awful. I recommend bowing out of the friendship if you find yourself being friends with a narcissist, but unfortunately, you can't control who your coworkers are, and you can't handpick your family members either. Limiting your interactions with them as much as you possibly can in order to protect your own peace is highly recommended. Being in a romantic relationship with a narcissist is a whole other ballgame, though. It is the absolute worst. Their control and manipulation tactics are most definitely psychological and emotional abuse. The destruction that narcissists create and the devastation they leave behind often causes so much residual damage in the codependent. I'm not gonna lie, you guys. I don't know how I made it out of my toxic, covert narcissist relationship this unscathed. Don't get me wrong. I've had to work through a lot after the fact to try and make sense of it all. But given everything he put me through, you'd think I'd be really messed up in the aftermath. A couple things that I think have helped me rise from the ashes of that abominable mess of a relationship are, for one, by the time I finally ended things, it was a long time coming. I was miserable in that relationship. I had become a shell of myself. I knew I deserved better. I just didn't know how to escape. But when I finally did, the freedom I experienced was sweeter than anything I could have ever imagined. I finally was free. I finally had peace. I finally had my independence and autonomy that had been completely stripped away from me back. My nervous system could finally exhale and experience a sense of stillness it had been desperately craving for years. Little things like watching a TV show I'd always wanted to watch, or visiting my family, or voting for whoever I wanted to vote for, or just chilling at home with my cat, or drinking coffee. Those are all basic human rights type things, right? Like very, very basic and boring sounding things, really. Well, crazy as it sounds, I didn't have the freedom to do those things in that relationship. When I say I was held hostage in my own life, I mean it. And there's 100 other ridiculous examples I could give. The other reason I'm able to sit here in front of you guys today, no longer a total shell of myself and not suffering from what very well could and should be the residual shrapnel from that relationship, and the most important reason, my relationship with God. I owe everything to the one who not only saved me from my own brokenness and sin, but saved me from the hell on earth I was living in that relationship. He is the only true explanation that I have for not being a complete mess of a psychiatric patient today. I had prayed for years for God to give me a sign. Show me if I'm meant to be with this person or not. give me peace one way or the other. There were plenty of signs, but, that person's manipulation and control unfortunately overshadowed those a lot of the time. The moment I finally decided, this is it, this is where it ends, I had a peace in my body I have never felt before. It was time, and I've never questioned if I made the right decision. My mom gave me a small booklet of index cards many, many years ago that she's written Bible verses on that have been of particular importance to her over the years. I keep it open on my nightstand. One of those index cards has Isaiah 43, verses 18 through 19 written on it. This verse states, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." The night I decided to finally break free from that relationship, I happened to look at the index card booklet, and that's the verse that it was opened to, staring right up at my face. God was telling me it's time to let go of that person, that relationship. That is now the past. He is ready for me to recognize he has new plans waiting for me. It wasn't coincidence that that was the verse that just so happened to be staring at me in that moment. Something that not many people in my life know is that I actually had to get on antidepressants when I was in that relationship. I experienced a true nervous system breakdown in the fall of 2022 after one of our infamous 8-hour long fights as I was just starting to come down with COVID. I felt depression, fear, and anxiety like I had never ever felt or could have imagined before. I couldn't work for almost 2 months. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't function as my normal self. It was terrifying. I literally had hallucinations of seeing demons. I'm not kidding. I had to start seeing a psychologist who specialized in depression, and my test results that came back after he had me take a depression intake questionnaire were alarming. My level of depression was in the most severe category. Guys, I'd never been depressed in my life. I'd never had anxiety in my life. This was a state of myself, my brain, my body I had never experienced before. All because I totally abandoned myself in that relationship. The emotional and psychological abuse had finally taken its toll, and my nervous system completely shut down. But by the grace of God, He delivered me from that state of clinical depression. I stayed on the antidepressants up until June of this year just because I was absolutely petrified to ever possibly experience that again. I am so happy and grateful to report I haven't had any depression issues since coming off of it. It's very apparent that it wasn't a chemical imbalance. It was a matter of my circumstances in that narcissistic, codependent relationship. This isn't just a matter of happiness, you guys. This is a matter of your sanity, your mental health, and your well being. In the couple years I've been out of that toxic relationship, honestly, it's crazy to think that I was stuck for so long. It's like that wasn't my life. Those are not my memories. I should be in an insane asylum after what I went through. But you know what, guys? I've just felt such unexplainable peace. This is also one of God's many promises. Philippians 4:7 says, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And literally, that is the only thing that I can attribute my peace and happiness to. It is peace that surpasses all understanding because I should not be so okay after everything I went through. But I am. So his promises are true. Guys, if any of you are in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, God has a better plan for you too. I promise you. Life is so unbelievably beautiful. on the other side of that painful relationship dynamic. You are worth so much more. I would rather be single for the rest of my life than ever experience that type of abuse again. But it doesn't have to be that way. I don't have to whisk myself off to the nunnery, although those were my #life goals after finally breaking free from the narcissistic chains of my ex. For my anxiously attached friends out there, you don't have to stay trapped in the codependent role. You don't have to spend 10 years in a toxic relationship like I did to finally get fed up and say, enough is enough. And you also don't have to carry these cinder blocks of anxious attachment into your next relationships. You can heal your anxious attachment, just like I'm currently working on healing my fearful avoidant attachment. It takes time, it takes work, but having the peace and freedom of secure attachment, worth it. Last episode, I mentioned at the end how I was super excited to really start on my attachment healing journey that same day episode 9 was released. I've had the head knowledge, I've got the book smarts. Lord knows I've done more research and devoted more of my time to the subject matter of attachment science over the last 8 months than I did my entire 8 years working towards my journalism degree. But self awareness and head knowledge is just the beginning. I took part in my first hybrid group coaching session that attachment expert Dr. Sarah Hensley conducts. And guys, it was amazing. I am so incredibly excited to finally learn the metacognitive skills to truly change my insecure, fearful avoidant attachment. This is the real deal. And for my AP or FA peeps that lean anxious and have ever found yourselves living in the brutality that is the narcissist, codependent, toxic relationship dynamic and declare never again, this hybrid group is the perfect place for you too. I'll link Dr. Sarah Hensley's website in the show notes for you to check out if you're serious about healing this part of your life and ready to experience meaningful, secure relationships from this point on, just like I am. If anyone that you know is trapped in this type of relationship, I know how helpless it feels. Many of my friends and family members felt that way too. Unfortunately, kidnapping me for my own good wasn't really an option. I had to figure it out for myself. I had to finally see things as they were myself. I had to hit my own breaking point. And I know that this absolutely crushed those that loved me. Just don't give up on them. Don't stop loving them. Share this podcast with them. It's impossible to know what they are truly going through. It's impossible for you to ever be able to wrap your mind around why they stay. If you've never experienced it yourself, it is impossible to get it. But that's the nature of abuse. I pray for any of you or any of your loved ones that may be in a similar situation. I pray for the Lord to open eyes and make a way where it feels like there is no way, just like He did for me. Peace is possible on the other side of this. Whew. All right, guys, that does it for another heavy episode of the Attachment Confessions. I really appreciate you guys giving me space in your life and allowing me to share my story. Be sure to tune in next week for episode 11. I'm starting a brand new series that I am so freaking pumped to bring to you guys, so you definitely will not want to miss it, okay? Until then, I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will see you all next Wednesday right here on the Attachment Confessions. Love you guys. Bye.